Welcome to the UKOCR Community Podcast, presented by Obstacle Racing Media. Each episode, we'll be talking to race directors, elite runners, weekend warriors, and frankly, anyone else from the UKOCR scene that will talk to us. Here is your host, Alan, aka Muddy Duck.
Anywhere in Chicken Town. The bloody scene is bloody sad. The bloody news is bloody bad.
Instances, and anyone else just happens to be listening. Welcome to another edition of the UKOCR podcast. I'm Alan, and I'm the host of this sometimes, not all the time. For the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to be jumping on with intros. So this is my last intro for a couple of weeks. So I've recorded the podcast, and I've got them all ready to go. But this week I'm away. Yes, so I'm not on holiday because I'm actually going to be working. But working to put on an event, yes. It's the Farmyard Jam run by Overload, which I'm a major shareholder of. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to building the obstacles, getting them all up, marking the course out, and then seeing the 50 plus runners that we've got rocking up, trying to run for 48 hours, you know, whether it be in a relay format or whether it be running solo. We have got some amazing athletes coming down. I'm really excited to be hosting this. The first of its kind, the first multi-day event of its kind, but it's non-stop running. I am so excited. Anyway, that's me. I'm not going to dwell. I just want to let you know before I go that, like I say, we have got the podcast all lined up, but you're not going to get to hear me on intros for the next couple of weeks, and I'm not going to be on Swift Half either. But Ian will be on with a guest. Unless I drop in. Who knows? Anyway, thank you for listening, guys and girls. And here it is, today's podcast. Hi, listeners, and have I got a treat for you today? A few weeks ago, you heard me talking about the tunnel race, running the dark, 200 miles. And I wanted to get someone on who'd done it. Maybe not say someone who won it, not someone who'd come second or third, or would they come not last, but I tried to get someone on who'd done it to talk about it. And I've got that. Vic Owens, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you.
Before we talk about the tunnel, and then something else, I'm going to leave a little pause there for my listeners to keep them interested. Let's talk a little bit about you. Ultra running. How did you get into it?
Yeah. So I started running in 2016, I think, and it kind of took me about maybe 11 months to discover ultra running. I realised that I did not like to run fast, and I did not like to run distances. I like to run in the hills for a really long time. Thus, the obsession with ultra running started, and I kind of never looked back after that. Wow,
that's a very fast zero run to ultra run. It took me nearly 10 years to get into ultra running. I was a 10K runner for literally 10 years. Was it a case of I just want to go longer and longer and just keep on going? The engine was just constantly running? Well,
yeah, so I started running for my mental health. And I knew I needed to do something. I'd come out of a relationship, and I knew I needed to do something for me. So I decided to train for a half marathon, and I did what most people do when they start training for a race, followed a training plan, and basically just spent the next 4 months beating myself up because I couldn't perform to how this training plan was telling me I should be. But still, I did my half marathon. And then I was like, right, I suppose marathon's next. So I booked a marathon, and then thus started another training plan, and thus hated every second. And I remember crossing the finish line of my first marathon and projectile vomiting everywhere. And I just thought, this is not the moment of glory that they promised me in the magazines. I'm never running again. Never. I was like, I hated it. I hated every second of it. It was disgusting. It was vile. I just didn't love it. And I went back to running club because I joined a running club about 6 months before that to try to sort of learn about running and do the right things. And I said to one of the guys at the running club, I'm not signing up for running club again. Once my membership's run out, never running again. I'm done. And he was like, Vic, you need to come and run in the hills. And I was like, mate, if I can't run on the road, how am I meant to run in the hills? And he was like, it's different. And 4 weeks later, I was at the start line of another marathon, but this time it was a trail marathon. And I loved every single second of it. And I crossed the finish line. I took 40% longer than I'd taken on the road marathon. I crossed that finish line and I didn't want to stop. I was like, are we done? I want to carry on. I just loved it. I'd eaten bags of crisps with people. I'd shared someone's cake. I'd sat at a checkpoint for 10 minutes, like talking about ridiculous things that I never share with the closest people in my life. And I was like, this is it. I want to stay in the mountains and I want to stay out here forever. And then I signed up to a 69-mile ultra marathon. And after that, the next year I was running a 200-miler and I just went from there.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's to go from a marathon. Which was your first marathon then, which your trail marathon? We're going to forget about road because I'm not a road runner. I hate road runners. Not worried about that.
My first trail marathon was the Excalibur Marathon in North Wales, which goes along the Clwydian Range and Offa's Dyke Path.
Right.
So it's quite a lean one.
Was it a straight up marathon or did they have other options? Like, did they have the ultra marathon? Because I'm thinking you said there at the aid station, there was like you're sharing bags of crisps and chats. And you usually get those in like, I know you get them in a lot of trail runs, but
no, I think it's the marathon option if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And then a 69-mile. So you go from a marathon to doubling that distance plus a little bit more.
Yeah,
this is crazy.
So I did I did Hadrian's Wall next with Rat Race, and I liked it, but I realised that it was still really commercial for me. I wanted something a little bit more wild and raw. And that's when I saw the Offa's Dyke race, which was very not commercial, very basic, very raw, very much like, here's a bit of food at a checkpoint. You do have to do all the work and you could be on your own out there for the whole night. And I was like, that sounds like a really good idea. Who wouldn't want to do that? So I signed up for that.
Oh, wow. Was it, you mentioned earlier on that you'd done these training plans and they didn't work for you on the road. Was you doing anything from them training plans? Were you taking anything of that into your trail running?
I really wasn't. I decided to do a little bit of research and I started just taking miles out of the equation and running for time instead, time on feet. I realised that I could run, say, 10 miles on road, what I might run 6 miles on trail, but those 6 miles on trail were making me so much stronger and I loved them. I loved every second of it. So I started training time-wise. I didn't train to a plan. I just kind of was like, right, what can I fit into my week? What do I think is going to be beneficial? And let's do it. And I never did anything like strides or intervals or anything. I was just literally just like, right, I'm going to go for a run up that hill and see how it goes.
I love that mate, because that's similar to me. So I got into ultra running very, very recently. I got slower and slower as the years have got onto me. So on, as in racing wise, but I've got further and further. And I'm all about time on feet at the minute. So even though I have a watch and I know exactly how far I've run, I don't look at the distance. I want to go out running and I want to run for 4 hours, or I want to run for 5, or I want to run for 6. And that's all I aim for. So I'll run 3 miles in one direction before I turn around, and 3 hours in one direction before I turn around, and I know I'm going to get about 6 hours of running in. Is that a little bit like you was doing then when you say you're looking for more time on feet?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I just kind of very often as well, I wouldn't even set a route or anything. And I'm really good at getting lost anyway. So very often I'd be doing a lot longer than I'd planned. So yeah, it was all very much like I learned that I liked running to feel. So I just listened to my body. I ran for as long as I wanted, time on feet. If I wanted to walk, I'd walk. Literally, like, ultra running has taught me, like, you do not have to run 100%. If you want to take a 5 minutes and walk, that's perfectly fine. And I felt like in road running, that was something I was not allowed to do. I was not allowed to catch my breath or enjoy a moment. I was always on show and I had to be somewhere else quickly rather than here. And trail running just let me be myself and enjoy running. And that was a major thing for me.
Wow. So before you found the tunnel, how many ultras had you done pre-tunnel?
I honestly cannot tell you how many ultras I've done. It's something someone has asked me recently. I can tell you that prior to the tunnel, my biggest distance is 625 miles. I've done the Monarch's Way, and that's 625 miles long. I've also done like the Offa's Dyke Path 3 times now. I've also done Long Lass, that's 253 miles. So yeah, I've done some big miles. And I got to a point, I think, with the Monarch's Way doing such big mileage that what do you do after that? It's a bit hard to sort of beat that. And people start saying, what, you're doing a 10K on the hills? That's nothing for you. You know, you kind of, it's like, what is next? You know, what's going to happen from here? So I realized that I wanted to do something that wasn't just about distance, because I know I can do distance. I wanted to try something that was more than distance. And the tunnel is pushing you to your mental capabilities, your limits. Like, how far can it push you till you literally drop and cannot get back up? And that, strangely, it really appealed to me.
Wow. Before we come tunnel, I want to talk about Monarch's Way. I can't even dream of doing 625 miles. You know, just that would be how long did it take you?
So I did that as an FKT attempt, and I did that in, I think it was like, I'm really bad with stats, and I know I should remember things like this. I think it was like 13 days, 13 hours, and my plan was that I had a crew with me in a van, and I would run all day, and then I'd literally just drop into the van at night and wake up really early and run all day again and just repeat and repeat and repeat until I was at the end. And I think the FKT on it was held by a guy, and I think it was something like 15 days, because my dad had made a joke that, are you going to go for 14 days? You're going to break the guy's record. And I was like, yeah, of course I am. I was absolutely not planning on doing that. But it just went well. That I didn't have a day that I didn't meet my quota, and I just kept going and going. And yeah, that is probably like my most favorite race experience and run, because it was just so, it just became life. You know, those 2 weeks out there, that just became my life. And when I had to come back to reality, it was really, really hard for me.
I can imagine. How did your body cope with it? I've done my first ever, so people listening to this know that I've now done, my longest has been 61 miles, which was only the other week, which I did quite well. I've never run that far before. I've got an 100-mile lined up this month, so I'm going to pick your brains now. How do I stop blisters? Because I got to 50 miles and then the blisters started. How do you stop those? Is there anything you can do?
Well, I can tell you how I stopped them. I stopped wearing conventional trainers, and I started running either with no shoes or in minimalistic barefoot shoes, which pretty much stopped all my foot problems. So that's how I stopped, but it's not always the most popular answer that people want to hear. They're usually like, you know what, I don't want to take my shoes off and run without them, actually. You weirdo. But that's been my experience. I can only tell you what's worked for me.
What's that like, running without shoes? So do you go up in the hills without shoes?
Yeah, I do. That is my most favourite place to be. I hate being on road. Running road without shoes is not pleasant for me.
No.
It's not enjoyable. Like I just love being on like the trails, the natural terrain, up in the mountains. That's it. I just love it, and it has made my feet and my running so much stronger. My feet are like, my son says my feet are like Hulk feet because they're super strong apparently. But they do, like, literally, you know, like how when you have done a long run and you've really worked your legs, you feel it. Or yeah. It's the same with my feet. Like all the muscles being used, they're doing all the work. But yeah, they're just getting stronger every run they're out there.
Wow. So I'm going to delve a little bit more into this because I'm now, and I knew you'd done this, and I was hoping you were going to fetch it up. So if I was going to go, so I live just short of the Pennines, so I live just outside Sheffield, a little town called Barnsley. For me to get to the Pennines, it's a 20-minute drive. So I'm going to go out to the Pennines, so up towards Glossop area. Would I then, as I jump out of my car, just not running any shoes, or would I go up onto wait until I got up into the hills, with a little bit softer, you know, a little bit more peaty before I took them off and started to run? How would I learn? If
it's your first time going barefoot, then I would suggest that you go somewhere that is really nice and soft and squidgy. Because when we wear shoes, we've got that thick layer between us and the ground, and it actually it blocks off anything that's underneath us. That's what shoes are there to do, isn't it? To take away any discomfort, and all we're running on is like squidgy, bounciness that the shoe company has given us so that we're faster and more comfortable. But it's also created a wedge that takes away any like sensory response or feedback from the ground to the feet to our brain. So that is completely blocked off. Yeah, it's like putting a glove on. You don't feel stuff. It's exactly the same as that. So for the first time, if you're going to take your shoes off and go barefoot, you're going to experience all those feelings that your body is not used to feeling, and your brain is going to go, "Brrr." So you want to make sure it's a good experience the first time, or you might not want to try it again. So I would definitely suggest just going out somewhere nice and squidgy with like some grassy patches and enjoying the experience, and building it from there. And, you know, as you learn to respond to the signals that your feet is telling you and sending to your brain, then start trying things more technical and just listen to your body and go with the flow. You'll also find that when you start barefoot running without shoes, your form is different, your gait's different, your stride's different. It is a completely different way of running. So it's almost like starting to learn from scratch. So yeah, it's a new experience, and it's different for everyone. Just like running is different for everyone, and everyone has their own form, their own way of doing things. It's the same as that. So it's all about learning your way, what works for you and what feels good.
And how did you get into it?
So I was running the Chester 100, and I was running distance, but sort of after 50 miles, a bit like you said, I was starting to experience some pain, some blisters, some hot spots. My feet were just sore. You know, when your feet are in your shoes and you just want to get out of them, you just hate every step. It's painful.
Oh, yes.
I was just like that, you know, for the long distances. And I met someone on a run, and he was at the time, I was like, oh, here's this hippie fella, you know, with his vegan Betty and his sandals. He was running in sandals. I was like, I bet he's a tree hugger. And he was talking to him, and I was having some highs and lows with my nutrition. And he said, oh, you need to try a plant-based diet. And I was like, do I now, really? And then he said, you need to get out of these shoes. They're no good for you. And I was like, oh my goodness, how fast can I get away from this guy? Unfortunately, he was faster than me anyway, so he got away from me. But then I met him again on the run, and we started talking. And then at the end of the run, I asked the race director to take my shoes off because I was in so much pain I couldn't take them off. And I just remember everyone that was there sort of gasping as my shoes were taken off, and my feet were ruined. And I would looked at them, and you're emotional at the end of a race, aren't you? You know, you're overwhelmed with achievement and what's just happened. It was 100 miles. I was like blown away. I was tired. I wanted to cry. I wanted to eat everything. And I saw my feet, right? And I just remembered something my dad had told me. And he was like, you've only got one body, and you should always respect it. No matter what you're doing, you should never abuse it. And I looked at my feet, and I was just thought, I'm abusing my feet. And I threw those shoes in the bin at the race hub, and I went home with no shoes. And I was like, I'm not wearing shoes. And the next morning, I was like, how am I meant to walk my dogs? I've got no shoes. And I walked them barefoot to the park and back. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And to be honest, they were so swollen, I'm not sure I could have put them in shoes anyway. Yeah. And the guy that I'd met on the race, Mark, he sent me a Facebook message, and he's like, I'm going to send you a pair of sandals. And I was like, oh my days. And he did. He sent me a pair of sandals, and I tried them, and the sandals weren't quite for me. But I started looking into barefoot shoes, and I started looking into barefoot running, and thus my journey started. I found a barefoot pair of shoes that I really liked, and then I kind of discovered that I also wanted to do just barefoot running. And that just really worked for me, and it completely changed my distance running. I was running distance without any discomfort. I wasn't getting all those little niggles I used to get in my feet. Like, I wasn't going over on my ankle. Everything just came together and worked for me.
So going back from that, because I'm going to try this. I'm actually going to try barefoot running now. You've convinced me. Going back from that, back to normal shoes, because I don't think I could. Because I do a lot of obstacle course racing, I can't do OCR with in bare feet. It's just that would just be impossible, or I think it would be impossible. Probably isn't, but I've got in my head it's going to be impossible. How would I go back to? Is the transition phase, or can I go all the way? Can I go halfway?
I know a lot of people that have different shoes. They run different things, and some have barefoot shoes, and they do certain things in those barefoot shoes, and they have other shoes. And they usually, the other shoes gradually come down to like more minimalistic shoes. So it is all about what works for you. Only you know the answer. This is your body. You're the only person that runs in it and feels and gets the feedback of what's happening. So it's very much a personal answer. But no, I can assure you nothing is impossible. Like, I mean, was there a time where you thought running an ultra was impossible? Was there a time you thought running 5K was impossible for you? So nothing is impossible. We are the only person that sets are impossible.
See, now you've set me a challenge now to run an OCR barefoot. Any of my listeners out there want to run an OCR barefoot, hit me up. Let's think of one we can do. You must have had some close misses though, running barefoot, as in like maybe some stones that you've landed on, some stones, or even some thorns. Because where I run, there's a lot of thorns and things like that. That must be like ouch time.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. The worst incident I've had barefoot is on a run. I decided to climb up onto a summit point to take a selfie, and on the way down, I sliced my foot open. And I was like, oh, great, not even running. There's just me taking a selfie. So the incidents that I usually get myself into is normally the extra bits I'm trying to do, like take a selfie or have a good Insta shot. And I normally suffer for that. Running barefoot, it's not as scary and dangerous as people think, in all honesty. Yes, I've pulled splinters out my feet. I also pulled splinters out my hands after weeding the garden. And yes, I've pulled thorns out my feet. I've also pulled thorns out my hands from weeding my garden. So, it's not, it's your feet aren't going to fall off because you've got a splinter in them. And yeah, I've stepped on stuff and been like, ouch, that hurts. But I've also ran an ultra marathon and thought, my goodness, my legs hurt, but that didn't stop me. So it's just all about your perception, how you view things, how you handle them, and what you want, what works for you, and how you work around it.
Wow. Let's talk ultra now. Let's talk tunnel. Let's talk a little bit of tunnel. So we talked about the sensory perception. This is what attracted you to it. How did you prepare, knowing for a fact that you've got to run 200 miles or up to 200 miles in complete darkness?
Yeah. So I always sort of pick one race a year that I'm like, this is my race. All the other races are complements to that race, and this is my race. And for this year, the tunnel was my race. So I sort of spent like a year leading up to it training, and I would do things like I'd try to run tired. So I'd like, instead of going to bed, I'd be like, right, it's 11 p.m, it's my bedtime, but I'm going to now go out and run on a dark patch in my village for 3 hours. And I tried to do the same stint over and over again. So it was just boring and repetitive rather than running out for 10 and coming back, because that can be easier, can't it? Yeah. And also there is music that's played in the tunnel. So I downloaded that and I'd listen to it over and over again to desensitize myself to it. And yeah, I just like, you're not allowed any aids in the tunnel. So you can't put headphones on. You're not allowed sticks. Anything that might help you, you're not allowed. So I just train with no music. I'd run in my civvy clothes. So that's something I'm quite big in. I'd go and do mileage just in my skinny jeans and my hoodie. And like normal underwear, which is, I can tell you, horrific for women to run in, just to make myself uncomfortable. So to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And just do as many things like that as possible, to sort of make myself be okay with the hard times when they come.
So you rock up to this race and it's just a hole in a cliff face. I'm assuming it's a cliff face. I haven't been to it. So I'm assuming it's just a hole in a cliff face. You register, tell me more about it. Tell me what it was like, because everyone who's in there is in the same situation as you. You're all going to run for as long as you possibly can in this pitch dark tunnel, just running backwards and forwards. What was the mood like when everyone rocked up?
So it's really funny because everyone is so excited at the beginning, and everyone's put it down on paper. And on paper, it is 300% doable. And everyone's like, why can't people do it? What's wrong with people? I've put it on paper. I can do it. I've run further than this, blah, blah, blah. And they still go in that tunnel, and there's like that hub of excitement, and everyone's like, I'm going to run for as long as I can. Then I'm going to walk it out because I know I can do it. And then you get to like maybe coming up to the first night, and you're just like, I'm sick of this tunnel, And when you run outside and you go through the night, it can be really hard, and you wait for day to break, because when day breaks, everything is going to get better. The sun is going to give you that recharge. You have made it through the night. And in the tunnel, when day breaks, nothing happens. You're still in the tunnel. Yeah. And every time that you come out of the tunnel to go over the tracking beeping lap, you are blinded and it hurts and you can barely see. And just everything that used to be good is now bad. And it just completely blows your mind. It is just horrific.
Wow. Do you go out at either end of the tunnel then? Is there a timing mat at either end of the tunnel where you actually go out? What is it, 5 meters, 10 meters out?
Yeah, it is literally pretty much on the line. So you have to sort of step over it. And they say go a few steps and then come back just to make sure, you get your lap. Because if your lap doesn't get tracked, you don't get your lap. So everyone's like really cautious, like how far should we go and coming back. So yeah, it is. You are going out, and then when it is dark outside, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, literally. So you just don't know when it's coming, which is really hard because the tunnel isn't straight, so you don't see it initially, but you kind of know you're into that last little bit of the tunnel. You see the light, like, right, I just need to get there and turn around. When that light's not there and you're in the night, it's endless. It is really endless, and the shapes on the walls and just everything just messes with you. Like, you just see all sorts. And yeah, I've seen people sit down for a rest or fall asleep and get back up, and they don't know which way they're meant to go anymore. And it's just pure confusion. It's just craziness.
Oh gosh, I never even thought about that, because you're right. If you sit down in the middle and you don't know where you go, that must be. And if you went the wrong way, that's a lap wasted.
Yeah.
See, now I was thinking about it, but now you've completely understood. That would seriously mess with my head. What about? I can't go with people doing the wrong laps now. This is good. This is stuck now. I'm going to do an extra lap. And you're running, you've gone like 12 hours into it, whatever you are. A lot of ultra runners can go 12 hours and it's a whole different kettle of fish. But in that 12 hours, you're not seeing nothing but two walls down either side of you and the light at the end of the tunnel. How does that mess with your mind? As in, are you counting laps? Are you not counting laps? Are you just running? What is that?
I think everyone sort of tackles it differently. I was not counting laps. I didn't look at my watch. I just ran out and back. Now do it again. But it is really hard because you haven't got anything to keep your brain alive. It's as simple as that. You become dead in that tunnel. Everything gets taken away from you. All our natural connections, our human connections that keep us going through hard times are gone. So when you're out on the trails and you're doing your ultra or your race or whatever it is, you keep moving forward. There's a pretty tree, there's a nice bird, hello walker, hello sheep. You've got nothing in the tunnel. It is literally you and all those demons in your head that you always face at some point on an ultra, when you go there. And they don't leave because there's nothing else. You can't hide from anything. There's nothing to sort of disappear into. There's nothing to occupy you. And the race director stipulates at the beginning, he doesn't want people running next to each other. He doesn't want conversation. You run in a line. You're there on your own. Go and get it done. If you don't like it, go home. We didn't want you here anyway. It's as simple as that. It's hardcore. There is nothing. There's just not the tiniest bit of anything to keep you alive. It's just like a prison, basically. And the worst thing is, you've paid to be there. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, this is not for the faint-hearted. This is really not for the faint-hearted. Was you allowed to wear head torches, or is it just dark running? The lights in the tunnel?
You can. Yeah, you wear head torches. Yeah, you do. But it is darkness still. You've got your torch, but it's just darkness. Like you can imagine, like when you're outside in the pitch black, you can run in a town in the dark and it's not dark. But if you're out there on the trails where there's not a single light for miles and miles, even with your head torch, you're in the dark, aren't you?
Yeah.
And in the tunnel, you've got yourself going out, and then if you've got someone coming back, you're blinded. So you're like trying to look away because their head torch is coming towards you, and you're just disorientated. And yeah, it's really horrific.
Wow. Wow. I that was thinking. I'm thinking people coming back to you with head touch, and that's gonna be absolutely blinding. You're not gonna. I can see me turning around at that point and following them and doing it, missing another lap. I'm gonna miss loads of laps, me. But what about when I'm running and I'm doing a race? So when I said when I go out training, I run for time. But when I'm actually doing a race, I've got my watch on. Yeah. I know that I want to be the checkpoint's in 10 miles. So I'm aiming to get to that checkpoint within an hour. Within 2 hours. I'm trying to run at a 12-minute mile pace. You're in there. Your watch surely can't work inside that tunnel.
No, it's the GPS doesn't work properly. You've got, like, I use mine to track my time, just like, the clock time.
Yeah.
But you've got no phone signal. So, like a lot of the times you could like me personally, I send a message to my dad. I'm like, Dad, I'm having a rubbish race. And he's like, I believe in you. And it's just like, I'm thinking, do I want to walk all the way out the tunnel to message my dad? Or should I just keep being miserable? Because I'm going to be miserable anyway. Because you don't want to walk one extra step than you have to. So you haven't even got that human connection of being able to send a text message. You really are. You are 100% on your own. And then you get to a point where all of a sudden people start dropping off and they're just gone. Like, you just come back and you realise, I haven't seen the guy in the red shorts that gives me a little wave, or that nice lady who smiled sometimes, she's gone. And all of a sudden, you're going into the tunnel and it seems like ages before you see anyone. And that can be really horrific as well. Like, into the second half of the race, you're barely seeing anyone. Even though it's only a mile long, somehow it's just ages before you see someone. And that's quite scary.
I'm going to use something there that this is not meant to be funny, because as I was just thinking it in my head, but this is like an underground race. And I mean that literally. It's a niche race. It's one of these that it's been going a little while, but it's not going commercialized. It's, what did it have? About 25 runners, I think it was. All different abilities, the guy who finished first, or say finished first as in quit first, Gareth, he did 10 miles, 5 laps. Whereas we know that 5 people actually completed with 100 laps to 200 miles. It looks to me that the 100 mile was what a lot of people had in their head. Were people saying that before they started? I want 100 miles, or were they all saying I want 200?
Yeah, no. People go to finish it. Like, he very much stipulates this is not a race to see how far you can go, and he has a cut off as well. For the 100 miles, he wants you to go the distance. He knows you probably won't, but this is a race to see how far you can go in the tunnel. Some people, I know, like Gareth, who didn't go very far. He threw up everywhere. He had a stomach bug, and he was like, I'm going home. I don't blame him. But then some people just are like, do you know what? This isn't for me. This is just not what I thought it was going to be. And they go home. And some people sort of know it's horrific and fight to the 100 with everything they've got, and they're happy with that then. And then other people just keep going and keep going. And it's one of those races that no matter how close someone gets to the 200, you still don't know if they're going to get to the 200, because anything can happen. They could just drop to the floor and be out. So yeah, it's quite like nail-biting to watch, for sure.
So how did your race go?
Yeah, so not as planned. Surprise. So I really struggle at nighttime. Like, if anyone sort of like follows my social media or knows me when it comes to races and running, the dark is my enemy, hence me taking on the tunnel and doing like a really big challenge. So I lead a really, really busy lifestyle, and I do not get enough sleep every night. And like, as soon as that dark comes, my body's like, good night. And I, in races, will fall to the floor and wake up without any knowledge of falling to the floor. So this was kind of like my process through the first night of the tunnel. I had a few runners sort of stumble upon me and be like, Vic, you need to get up. And somehow I always, I think, managed to end up going the right way. But yeah, so this was my process during the night. It was a really tough night for me. And then sort of made it through the second day, and I struggled to get to the 100 in the time limit. I think I was in line within 5 minutes to spare of the cutoff. And like my focus to get to that 100 became my focus for the race. And I got to that 100, and I remember like getting over like that lap, and it was like 100 miles, and like a couple of the lads had waited for me to come in and give me hugs and everything, and I was like, woo! And like literally inside, that was the point that the fire went. I like, my body was like, you've done it, you've done what you came to do. Like my race finished at the 100 miles. I could feel it. Like my passion to keep running, my fire for that race was gone. But I was like, right, you need to go back out. So I went back out. I did quite a few more laps, like a couple more laps. I chatted to a few people as I went past them, and there was not many people left in there. And then I was just like,
you broke the rules. You talk to people. You broke the rules.
I know. Well, you're allowed to talk as you go past. You're just not allowed to sort of like run next to them and buddy up. But yeah, like I like people are pretty zombified by then.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like one guy had said to me, I think I saw a lion down there. I was like, I don't think you did. We were sort of like at that point, you know, people were a bit crazy. But yeah, and I decided like there was no reason, like I could start and I had time. I had a good time to get the other 100 done. I didn't have an injury. My feet were sore. Of course they were sore. My legs were sore. You know, I'd be Superwoman if they weren't. And I just decided that I was done. But like, it wasn't I didn't come away and was like sad about it. I woke up in the car and I was like, they're still running in the tunnel and I'm going home. I was well happy. I drove away with a big smile on my face. There was no regret.
Well,
so yeah.
What a thought. That's gonna be the quote. They're still running, I'm driving home. I'm gonna think of that when I finish next time. DNF, I'm gonna DNF at my next race. I'm driving home while they're still running. That's the best thought ever. That's the silver that's the positive in any negative. I like that. I love that. That's the right attitude. 108 miles you managed, which is good. You was you happy with that? You know, you hit the 100, that was your goal. Was your Yeah,
it was a bit strange though, because this was like my A race of the year, and I honestly thought, you know, I've trained so hard for this. I do like this thing. I've become obsessed with the race. It's all I think about. It's all I picture. I go to sleep thinking about how many laps I'm going to do, what I'm going to do. My processes becomes my whole world in training up to it, and then I'm there and I live it. And I thought, you know, that you have that, don't you? That what if I don't do it? Oh God, it's going to be awful. But I didn't experience that awful side. I felt really good with what I had done. And that was really nice. And that doesn't happen at every DNF. Like, you know, I'm not going to lie. A DNF usually hurts and it can sting a while and it can just sort of break your confidence a bit. But this one, I was really happy with, which is a really odd thing to say, isn't it? But I was. I came away happy. And yeah, I was happy with what I achieved and I was good. And like, I don't feel the need to go back. I was quite happy driving away. So, yeah, I think my time at the tunnel is done.
I like that. I like that attitude. And after you finished, we started talking. So we'll give a little bit of insight here behind the podcast. So we started chatting on Instagram, didn't we? And I asked you if you'd come on the podcast, and you were like, yes. And we set a date. And then all of a sudden, you piped up and went, well, I'm doing bridge next week, so shall we put it back a couple of weeks? And I'm like, what's the bridge? What's the bridge? And this scared me. I've got, you told me that I looked online, running the old Severn Bridge, again, 200 miles, round about 50 laps. You've got 55 hours to do it in. But this is a bridge. This is heights. This is where I am now. I can't even watch the videos on YouTube of people crossing bridges. I cross the motorway on one of my runs, and they have to run down the middle of the road. So there's a road that goes over a motorway near me, and I have to run down the middle of the road, so I can't see over the edges. I can't run on the pavement. I wait till the road's clear, run down the roads. The bridge. What made you sign up for this? After you've done the tunnel, this just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So funny story. I signed up for the tunnel, and that was my race. That was it. I was like, this is everything for me. And of course, the race director Mark threw a spanner in the works, and he did something that always gets me. He said, if you complete the tunnel and the bridge, you get a special medal. I was in. So
Give me the
now I
blame.
haven't completed the tunnel and I'm stuck with this freaking bridge, okay? I didn't even want to do it. I just wanted the special medal. So yeah, that is how I came about starting the bridge. The bridge is not something that would ever normally encapture me. I don't like heights. I'm scared of heights. I get really bad sickness and nausea, and I have an immense fear of water. So I'm fine to have a bath and a shower, and I'll run in the rain. But anything that could possibly go above my knees, and I'm quite short lass, like fills me with fear. Like I will tremble. So I thought, well, of course, yeah, special medal, and of course, it's another one of those impossible things that I should try out this year and challenge myself. Hence me being at the start line of the bridge.
I can imagine being on the start line. But we're going to hold back a little bit on how far you got. Compared to the tunnel, did you train? How could you train for this? Because you've got a little about the mentality, you know, it's laps again, it's running the same thing. So you knew what you were letting yourself in for. But there's elevation on this because you're going up and down the other side. Am I right in saying that? Or when I look at the bridge, it looks like you're going up and down. So we've got a bit of
100%.
elevation. It's not flat. You've got water down one side. You've got cars zooming down the other. You're on the road. A whole different scenario. Lots of things happening. Was it the same rules as in you can't speak to people, running single file, things like that?
Very much so, yeah. It's run by the same company, the same race director, Mark Cobain, and yeah, those are his rules, yeah. And with regards to training for the bridge, I didn't specifically train for the bridge because it was 4 weeks after the tunnel. So in those 4 weeks, I did recovery runs. I didn't do any big distance. My coach was like, well, all the hard work and training that you're going to do for the tunnel leads into the bridge. Makes sense. And the bridge was always just an afterthought. It was just to get that special medal, you know, after the big triumph at the tunnel. So, yeah. But on a positive, I entered the bridge with no pressure, no like expectation, because everything had been veered towards the tunnel. And here I was at the bridge, and I was actually really excited. Which is ridiculous because it's a bridge, you know, who wants to run over a bridge, for goodness sake? But yeah, like I thought I'd prepared myself for everything, but I had not prepared myself for the traffic and the noise, and that was awful. So I live in North Wales in quite like a little village. We have cars here, obviously, you know, but there we don't have traffic. Like, you know, like on the bridge, it was from mile 1, I was starting to get a headache. Some people like left that race who were running amazingly and nothing wrong with them. And they were just like, I cannot take one more lorry. It is horrific out here. We had like torrential rain. Then we had like mist and fog in the night. And then we had scorching, sunburning, like sunshine. We had everything and wind. The bridge just gave it all to us. It's vile. It's not nice.
And there was no chance of sleeping against the wall on this either. You couldn't sleep up against a wall on this. How did you get your rest?
Do you know what? I hit the side of the railings a number of times and bounced off them. Yeah, it was not pleasant.
How? See, I'm worried now. How tall were the railings, and could I have fit through them if I'd have landed on them?
Well, for me, it was quite safe because I'm little. If you're tall, with a normal height, it might have been a problem.
It would need to be caged in for. I've got the butterflies already. I'm going to assume that you didn't rest on the bridge. You ran to one end and then rested this time, as opposed to like in the tunnel when you said you could rest at certain points.
So. Yeah, so they asked that we had sort of reg start on the Welsh side of the tunnel. Bridge, sorry. I keep getting them mixed up. It's been a long month. So we had reg at the Welsh side of the bridge. And you'd run over to the English side, go over the timing map and come back. And they asked that you didn't rest on the bridge or on the other side because there was no one there if something went wrong. So come back to reg, rest by your box. So that was what they asked people. And of course, for the first day, everyone was in high spirits and feeling energetic, and that went well.
Yeah.
After that, it was just like oh, these railings look like a pillow. Well, that floor over there looks amazing. How long can I get away with sleeping there before the race director realizes I've been gone a while? Yeah, it was hard. Like, I personally spent the first night really struggling. Like, I just literally drop to the floor and sleep, and it's not until I wake up I realize I'm on the floor. And I can be awake, asleep for like 30 seconds to probably about 8 minutes, and then I'll be up again and I'll go. Like, I am bruised down on every part of my body from falling on the bridge and just dropping to sleep. I am black and blue. Oh. And that was just my process through the night. And it was really tough. And I literally just kept dropping, and I kept getting back up, going back, drop, get back up, and just over and over and over again.
Oh, absolutely mental. However, that might be mental, but 164 miles! That's amazing! How did that feel? I mean, 100 miles came, went. How did you feel at the 100-mile mark?
I tried to keep really calm, because I was aware that at the tunnel, 100 miles I'd become so obsessed with getting to it that it had become my end goal. So at the bridge, when I got to that 100 miles, I tried to put it out my head. Don't think about it. Just keep going. So I tried to be really, really like blasé about it. And like, yeah, just kept going.
And then you go for another 64 miles. The impressive thing I've seen on the stats though is 47 hours, 42 minutes. So for 2 full days, you ran with very minimal sleep. How did that affect you when you got to the end? When you decided to quit, what was going through your head when you decided this was enough?
Yeah, so I didn't actually get to make that decision. My body basically got to the point where I dropped and I didn't get back up, and they had to send someone out to bring me back. And like, I was in quite a bad way. I was just gone, 100% gone. I was in and out of consciousness. They got me back to the race start, and I didn't even have a clue that I was managing to get out and back in an hour, still in the second half, and I didn't have a clue that it had taken them X amount of time to get me back. I thought I was still going back out. I thought I was still on track. And I remember, like, the race director like went to take my timing chip off, and I was like, "Whoa, what are you doing? I don't think so. I need to get back out there, mate." And it wasn't until someone said to me, "Vic, it's been like 2 hours since you've been out there. You have been passed out. You're not well." That everything hit me. I was like, "Whoa, okay." They were like, "We're not letting you go back out. This is not your choice. We're taking you out the race." So yeah, it was just like I'd gone through like so many hours of just falling and get back up, and then I just fell, and I literally just did not get back up. And yeah, it's just really weird. So yeah, it's like a completely different ending to the tunnel, and this for me has been harder, without a doubt.
Yeah. I can imagine it's outside. Although we want to be outside, you've got all the elements, as you mentioned, the wind, the rain, the fog, the sunburn,
Yeah.
and then 48 hours, literally 2 days of constant running with minimal sleep. How long did it take you to recover?
I'm still recovering. So it was really weird. So I got picked up and went back. And like, I could not sleep after I got back. I got into bed and I could not sleep. Like, my body didn't want to sleep now. I'm like, now you don't want to sleep? Really? Are you serious? And it was just like, yeah, it just plays everything through in your head, like, what's happened in the last X amount of time. And then all of a sudden, everything hurts. It's really funny. Like, when you stop, it's like all of a sudden you can't even get up to go to the toilet. But like 2 hours ago, you were running endlessly up and down, like, even though you just run 150 miles, but now you've stopped. No, you can't even take a step. It's crazy. But yeah, it was just like, it was a process. And like, now at the moment, I kind of hit after lunch, and all of a sudden I'm like an old granny, and I'm like, I have to go to bed. I need to sleep. So yeah, like physically, my legs are actually all right. I've still been out and done a little run every day, but like mentally and the tiredness, it's like hard to like be in work and like be functional and try to be one of the normal team members, because inside I'm like a zombie dying.
I can imagine. Did you, once you finish races like this, I'd say I've done my first 61 mile of the week. I ate for 24 hours. I finished and I just ate for 24 hours. Are you like that to replenish your body, or is your body a little bit more natural recovery?
Yeah, every race is different. This race I've struggled to start eating again. I've been forcing myself to eat. So every race is different for me. There are some races that I do, and I'm after 24 hours, I'm all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, how much of this house can I eat in 10 minutes? And then there are other races when I'm just like, I don't fancy food. I have to force myself to eat for a week. So I guess it's just how my body responds, and just how it balances out again.
Wow. What's next? The question is, what is next? Is it for Vic? What else have you got planned?
Well, the next race is, I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's the UK version of the Berkeley Marathons. So I've been invited to do that this year, so that should be interesting. And I'm really obsessed with backyard ultras. I've only done one. I did my first one this year, but I'm quite obsessed with them, and I'd like to sort of like challenge myself and see how far I could go in a backyard ultra. I think that'd be really cool. So I think probably that might be my next little obsession.
How far did you do in the one backyard ultra that you did?
30 yards.
All right, that's okay. That's a good start. I've done one. I tried one. Not an organised one. I've got to admit, not an organised one. And I got to 7 before I got injured. There was a stile on ours, the stiles that you go over when you're up in the hills and you go over. And it had just rained. And as I went and stood on the stile, my foot went forward and I hit the top of my foot on the bar where the stile is. So it went across the bar, and I got my whole foot just swollen up and I couldn't go any further.
Ouch.
But I was doing them in 45 minutes. I was doing the 4.2 in 45. Did you go that fast, or did you go a little bit slower?
I literally went as slow as possible. So I decided that my aim was for 24 hours, and my aim was coming 55 minutes every time. So I would run, and then I'd look at the last mile, I'd check my watch, and if I had loads of time, I'd walk it out. Because like when I stand, I get really stiff, and that like I don't want to start moving again. So for me, it's like moving as much as possible helps. So so that was my aim. And I got to the 24 hours, and then I was like still moving well. And I decided then that I was going to run a bit faster. And that was nice, using different muscles. But yeah, my goal was sort of 55 minutes, just to make sure I could keep going and not burn into like my energy levels or anything.
Wow, love it. I love it. And before I let you go, do you want to give a shout out to anyone, anything, tell us what kit you wear? Maybe you never know, so they might listen to this and you might get a freebie from them or something like that. Give a shout out to whoever you want, Vic. The floor is yours.
Totally. So me and my best mate Gav, who we run together, we have our own running brand, which is We Run Bright. So big shout out to all our Bright squad, basically, who run in our kit and support us. And also to our, I work for Every Run Counts, which is a platform that helps people get and stay active. So a big shout out to Every Run Counts for everything they do, helping people and raising money for charity.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining me. And as more listeners, you will be able to find links for both of these in the description. If you want to follow Vic, I will put her Instagram page in there as well. Vic, thank you very much. Good luck with everything you're doing this year. I want to get you back once you've done the Barclays as well, just to chat about how that went for you, if you're happy to come back on with me.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
I don't know what you want. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side. My love, you say you wanna try.